Hey everybody, thought we'd take a little bit of a break here away from the usual awards talk and everything. We've got the Oscar nominations out finally. WGA is coming up here this weekend. So since we're kind of in the middle of everything there, and yeah, WGA I think we talked about last time, so probably for the films Promising Young Woman and what was the other one? Okay, doesn't matter. We talked about it last time, so yeah, look for that if you need to in the last video. But I thought we would take a little bit of a break here from all the awards talk. We talk something I love to follow every year. That's college basketball. We're talking March Madness here. We're doing a bracket. Well, I mean, I can't totally say I came up with this originally, but bracket breakdown is what we can really call it. But I did something like this actually just on my local radio station here. That was 3 years ago now. Or 3, 4, well, going on 4 years is how it goes. It was the 2017 season when North Carolina won, and it was really fun to watch the show that year and stuff, and the shows I should say, the games, everything. Again, I'm so used to award stuff, so we're talking used to that kind of vernacular, but yeah, watching the games this year was really cool too because I got like I said, a new package this year for cable. So I haven't had ESPNU before, and a lot of the semifinal and finals rounds for these the smaller college Division One conferences there. It was really fun to watch some of those teams for the first time, and then it's like, okay, so now I have a little bit of an idea of what it's going to be like as they play some of the more well-known power conference teams, from the Big 12 and the Big 10 and Pac-12 and the rest of them there, SEC, ACC, and so on and so forth. Anyway, so I guess we'll go ahead. I kind of thought about a few ways to do this, and it's like, well, it's going to be really confusing if we just go, through the whole, the first 32 games and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to go kind of corner of the bracket by corner of the bracket until we get to the Final Four, and then obviously I'll save that part for the end here. So I'll go ahead and just go with the West bracket, which comes up on mine first here. We'll kind of work our way down from top to bottom here. So that's just like 116, 8, 9, so on and so forth. Okay, so our first game, I should say, in this bracket, and again, it's not chronologically by any means, but just by, again, going top to bottom, is Gonzaga against either Norfolk State or Appalachian State. And between these two, obviously the 16-16 and then 11-11, those two matchups are the first four, they play tomorrow. So most brackets and most leagues and stuff, it doesn't matter who wins those. You take whoever you think, can win between the two. You take them versus whoever they play in the actual first round. So, yeah, it's not very common for any one of those first four to win second round. I mean, it happens sometimes, but I think it's been a few years since we've seen it. And, as many of you historians out there will know, it was just 3 years ago now, and I was idiot who fell for it. Virginia is the only one seed to fall to a 16 in the first round. It was, can't even remember, was it UCBG or something like that? Or UMBC? It was one of those two. It was on one of those 4-letter acronym schools. And yeah, it was obviously devastating because I picked Virginia to win the whole thing that year. But it was devastating to watch them. But I was like, I remember all of my relatives that we were all in, brackets and stuff. We all throw in $5 in a pool and all that. I never win, but it's always fun to throw $5 in. I don't know, maybe this year is my lucky year, but it was like everybody was texting me like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" and stuff, and it was really exciting for him. I'm like, I can't get it right. So that obviously blew up my whole bracket that year. But I remember telling some people, it was like, you better enjoy this now because you're never going to see it again, and it's not going to feel this way again. The next time it happens, people are going to say, "Oh, remember when it happened this first time?" Because in all the years they've done this, that was the first time that it happened, and to see that, was definitely. Definitely something you're not going to see again from that same perspective. So, are we going to see it here? I doubt it. No, Gonzaga is the number 1 overall seed. They're undefeated this year. They've got arguably the best lineup in college basketball today, this year, I should say. And potentially maybe some Player of the Year contenders there. I mean, you had Kispert on the All-American team and so on and so forth. So, yeah, Gonzaga, I think, should easily handle whoever wins between Norfolk State and Appalachian State. And just for fun on that first four match, Appalachian State was kind of an upset win. Norfolk State was the expected win in, I forget which conference that is. But yeah, I think Appalachian State would probably be the one that Gonzaga plays. But, it's always kind of tough to predict those because it is a pretty even, when they're both seeded at 16, they think they're pretty, the commission thinks they're pretty easily, evenly matched, I should say. Okay, then we've got the 8 and 9. The 8 and 9s are just, they're just dangerous. It's like stepping on a landmine. It's like, okay, you got 50-50 shot here. Since they're seated so closely. And this one is Oklahoma, Missouri. I haven't seen a ton of Missouri this year. When I was, for most of the season, I did not have the SEC network. And Missouri in that SEC tournament, they did all right. I mean, they lost, the second round or whatever? They didn't get to the semifinals, I know that. Or did they? I can't. Anyways, like I said, SEC, since I don't watch them as much, I wasn't for sure. But Oklahoma, I have seen a lot of them this year. And just, I think here at the tail end of the season, the last couple of weeks, has been more downs than ups for them. They exited the Big 12 tournament relatively early. They've got a talented team on there, though, with Reeves and Malik and the rest of them there. So I'm picking Oklahoma here. Again, it's they actually showed a stat the other day. They said more 9s win than 8s in these matchups, but this is when I'll take the 8. I think Oklahoma, SEC, what's the word I'm looking for? Competition-wise, there's definitely great teams in the SEC. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you've got Alabama, you've got Arkansas, you've got quite a few there to worry about that we'll discuss further on in the brackets here. Florida and so on and so forth could maybe win a couple rounds and stuff. So it's definitely one where it's like, okay, Missouri, they were pretty good early out, and then since then, again, I think they've had some kind of questionable losses, some good wins, but it's like, yeah, I think Oklahoma overall does have a little bit more to them, and they have actually, I believe, I might be wrong about this, they have the first or the second most wins over top 10 rated teams or something like that. They're in that neighborhood there for most of the year, which means they're probably a good bet for that first round. But of course you never know. Okay, then you got 5-12 matchup here, Creighton and University of University of California, Santa Barbara, but yeah, just UC Santa Barbara, most people call them. So you've got Creighton here, who was runner-up in the Big East tournament. I'm Creighton's like the closest university to me where I used to live. So, and now it's Drake, but Creighton. I mean, to lose to Georgetown, who obviously went on a huge tear there, to the 8 seed to win the whole thing. Iona is the only other one, I believe, this year in their conference tournament to be seeded that low and to win their conference tournament. That's very impressive. And Patrick Ewing and them. I mean, regardless of how this the first round goes. They should be proud of that right there, obviously. And Creighton losing to them by, close to 25 points or so? Yeah, not great. But it's like, but Creighton, they had, when Villanova was in their stride, they took them down. I remember I picked them to win that one, and I got it right, and they won by, 18 or 16 or something, or maybe somewhere in that range, but I was, really impressed that they won. So they've got definitely some good wins there. They almost beat Kansas early on in the season before Kansas kind of fell off the map, and then they, of course, came right back right at the right time to start that charge up again, and now they're a 3 seed in this same corner of the bracket, so we'll get to them here in a few minutes. But, I think a lot of people are actually speculating here this could be the 12 over the 5. It's like commonly we see 1 every year. Not always. Sometimes it is just straight 5s go through, and sometimes it's a couple of 12s that get through. But this is one where I'm going to go with the 5 here. I'm going to go Creighton. They're a little bit more battle-hardened and stuff than Santa Barbara, so this is a closer one. There's definitely, I think there's another 5-12 matchup we'll get to for sure that I think is going to be a little more lopsided, potentially, but we'll see. All right, then you got the 4-13 Virginia against Ohio. That's just University of Ohio. And, yeah, this one, I mean, Virginia is, again, I think it's a risky pick here in the ACC. I mean, for every great win they have, there's a couple of real head scratchers there for ones they couldn't pull off. So I think it is Virginia that wins here, but I think it's a closer matchup than some people would think. And then Ohio, by the way, I don't have my solid table quite yet, guys. A few more days and I'll have it. Ohio, though, they did win their conference in kind of an upset. Again, I need to remember which. I think was that the was that Buffalo they beat. It was one of those. It was one of those smaller, one of those divisions that doesn't usually get televised. But yeah, they won in kind of an upset there. I think they were like a 5 or a 6 seed in their conference. So you got to watch out for some of those when they get on a hot streak right at the end there and start really pulling big upsets in their tournament. To get here, then they become really dangerous. But obviously, competition wise, in some of those lesser known conferences, sometimes you pay the price there. When you come up against somebody like a Virginia who's a 4 seed, or some of these other higher ranked teams here. So I think this is Virginia, but I think it's a close matchup here. Then you get the 6 and the 11. This is another one where the 11 seed plays the first 4. And this will be between Wichita State and Drake, by the way. And USC, again, Pac-12, I haven't followed hardly at all this year. And they're from what I know, it's like almost all the teams are kind of up and down. Colorado had great moments, but then lost to Oregon State for the championship there for that conference. USC was one. Yeah, they've had some good wins. Oregon, they've done all right. But still, I think USC can handle either one of these two teams. Wichita State, I did watch. They were the number 1 seed, I remember, in their American Conference. Houston being the number 2, and Wichita State, lost in a close matchup there, and that was against not Memphis, because or was it Memphis? I can't remember. They lost theirs. But that one was very close. I think they only lost by a point or something. I watched that game. And they played Drake, who Drake had up until like maybe up to about a month and a half ago or so, had an unbeaten record, and then they've lost a few here to Loyola Chicago and maybe one or two other ones this season. So I think Drake in that conference, though, I mean, it's Missouri Valley Conference, which I'll be honest, it's outside of Loyola Chicago, Drake, and maybe sometimes UNI. It's like it's not a terrifically super packed conference there. That's more a local one, so I can take that shot. But still, Drake. I think Drake can win against Wichita State. I would pick them over Wichita State, and then USC. I think in a close matchup with Drake. I think Drake will come close, maybe even would lead going into the last 5 minutes, and then USC might be able to hang on there and kind of escape with a victory there. So I think that one, I would pick USC, but again, it's that one could be an 11 over and a 6. Obviously, that's another one, that happens. Usually we get, again, maybe one of those a year, sometimes 2, but we'll see. Okay, then we got the 3 against the 14, Kansas against East Washington. And I think it's East Washington. I think that's the thing here. Put it down as E-Wash. Should be Kansas. I think that one might be a more lopsided game there. Moving on to Oregon, VCU. Yeah, VCU was fun to watch here. They which conference was that again? Atlantic 10, yeah. And they, let's see, who beat them again? I need to look at that one. Was that Colgate or... No, that wasn't Colgate. That was... Like I said, I don't, some of these conferences I'm not able to watch. Was that Liberty beat them? Or Morehead State? It was one of those. I don't know. I'll look around, then eventually I'll probably find it here. But or was it St. No, it was St. Bonaventure. Yeah, I did watch that one. St. Bonaventure beat them, but it was, I think, good Lord. I don't know. I think I do all my homework before this, but let's see here. I'll look up just their most recent one. It was Bonnie's, wasn't it? Yeah, the St. Bonaventure, yeah. That one I did watch as well, yeah. And, VCU's a solid team here. They're definitely one to watch out for. And you got Oregon, who, again, has been kind of up and down and stuff. I am going to go just barely. I'm going to go with Oregon here. I think this might even be an overtime game in the first round here. It could be that one to decide the 7 and 10. And actually, I think this is another one. I didn't see the stat, but this is maybe one where it's again more common for the lower seed to win going into the second round. It doesn't always happen, but I think there's some years where it's been like 3 out of 4. The 10 seed advances and the 7 goes home early. But that one is really close. But I'm going to go with Pac-12 team there just for some variety maybe. But still, I'll pick Oregon there. And then you got number 2, Iowa, my Hawkeyes against Grand Canyon. the Lopes, and I do follow Iowa Barstool, so of course they're already taking shots at them. Yeah, I think this is the Hawkeyes. I mean, they do have, I believe, the best player in college basketball right now in Luka Garza. He was the best player last year. I don't care what anybody says. That Topin guy can go fuck himself. It was Garza last year too. Come on. But it's kind of a shame they say that the whole player of the year stuff. It's like, oh, it's just based on who can dunk the ball the best. Pfft, screw it. Anyways, you got Garza who can shoot threes. He'll work the post. He'll have strong defense. He'll have tons of rebounds, offensive and defensive, and all that. It's like he's pretty complete package there. So of course I speak from a highly biased point, but still, yeah. I mean he's terrific player, and definitely if he was on any other squad, he'd be one of those guys you absolutely fear going into any game. So Iowa probably pretty lopsided, but I don't know. You never know about these because just a few years ago here, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago now, Michigan State. I remember my mom picked them to win the whole thing. And they were a 2 seed. They went up against the 15 in the first round and lost. Again, way less common. You'll see it once, maybe every 3 or 4 years. So we might be due for another one. But if it's going to be any 2 seed that loses to a 15 seed, we'd have to look to another corner of the bracket here because I really don't think Iowa's going to go out that early. All right, well, we'll start from the top down again as we go into the second round. And this will be, by my estimates here, Gonzaga, Oklahoma, which again, it's going to be a good matchup. Gonzaga, when they do go outside of their conference, their Big West or whichever one it was. I always forget which one that one is until they say it. But BYU, I remember they play them a lot. But still, they did play Iowa and beat them by 9 this year at a neutral site early on in the season. I remember, that day was the same day that Iowa State played, I think it was Oklahoma in the Big 12 Conference Championship for football. And I was flipping back and forth frantically between those two games when they were both on at the same time. And Zags can handle teams outside of their division pretty well. So Oklahoma, I think, will put up a good fight. Again, maybe a chance for a game that comes down to just the last minute and a half, 2 minutes to see who can take the lead and advance there. Potentially, if Oklahoma really hits their stride, it's possible. If they really hit their stride, they can really do some damage here. But again, I think it's the Zags here. Then you got the 5 and the 4 by my estimate in Creighton, Virginia. And again, Virginia being a riskier team than Creighton by my standards, a little bit at least. Because, sure, Creighton has dropped games against Xavier and a few others there this year, not including Georgetown there at the end. I think Creighton advances here. But again, Virginia will be a good matchup here. I think Creighton wins, though. Then you got the 6 against the 3 by my estimate. That's USC versus Kansas. And again, I would probably pick Kansas here. I think again you got a Pac-12, which does have obviously some competition when you get a few teams in there, but Big 12 outside of maybe kind of like Big 10 this year, it's like outside of a few teams there, and even those are never easy wins. If you get them, it's a pretty battle-hardened conference. So absolutely, I would pick Kansas there. And that would be number 7 Oregon Ducks against number 2 Iowa Hawkeyes in the last part of this second round matchup here. Yeah, Hawkeyes. I mean, the Ducks they'll play them well, assuming it is the Ducks and not VCU. If it happens to be VCU against Iowa, though, just for argument's sake here, that might be maybe a little bit of a better matchup. But still, I would pick Iowa regardless there. Okay, so moving on to Sweet 16 round. This is where I have number 1 against number 5. So that's the Zags against Creighton Blue Jays. I think it's the Zags again here. Creighton, they'll play hard, but I think that's Gonzaga's to lose. And then you'd have number 3 Kansas against number 2 Iowa, which is by the numbers it's kind of supposed to come down this way. It's supposed to be 1-4, 2-3 like most conferences play. This is a heartbreaker for me because it's like I think Iowa can play so well and they can really hit threes if Bohannon and Joe Wieskamp. Obviously, I watched more of these games than anybody else this year, pretty much. But we'll get to. There's some other teams I know pretty well, but I mean, if everybody's firing from 3 range and their defense is up, then Iowa wins 10 days out of 10. But then you get some, Kansas, who kind of has a similar deal there when they have Garrett and they have Brown and they have a few of those other guys that can really do some damage in the post and outside the post, outside the 3-line and stuff. Man, again, you can see some real damage done here. So in a heartbreaker, I think this, again, very easily could be an overtime type game, or again comes down to maybe even the last couple possessions in the last 30 seconds or 45 seconds of regulation time. I think Kansas advances here. So, yeah, it'll be sad to see my Hawkeyes go, but I have them exiting at the Sweet 16. And to get to Elite Eight matchup, which in this bracket I have it down to Gonzaga and Kansas. And I was going to say these two were supposed to play each other, but no, it was supposed to be the Zags and Baylor. Who, they were number 1 and number 2 in the rankings there almost the whole year. And I think it is going to be Gonzaga that wins here against Kansas. Again, though, I'd be wary because if Kansas really gets on a streak here, they can really do some damage. So that might be, again, potentially one where the Zags, maybe it takes them till the last minute or two to get ahead there and totally win the game. But yeah, it's going to be a tough one there. So I have Gonzaga as my first Final Four entry from the West bracket. We'll move on and we'll move down to the East bracket, which I have just going down left or top to bottom here. So we'll go here, and here we have. I need to remember who's which one is that? MTSM. That's Mount St. Mary's, of course. Mount St. Mary's against Texas Southern in the first 4 match, and whoever wins that one gets the very difficult task of playing Michigan. Who is the last kind of the lowest seeded of the 1 seeds, but still Michigan is the regular conference title winner for the Big Ten, has a really strong team and potentially even a stronger coach in Juwan Howard. So they're definitely a dangerous team to go up against anytime really in the whole tournament. And I think Michigan will handle these two. Between the two. I predicted Texas Southern to get this one, to get to the dance here. So Mount St. Mary's I did not. I can't remember who they beat out, but yeah, I would probably say that one's maybe the most difficult of these first 4 to predict. But I would probably go with Mount St. Mary's there, just because they did kind of upset me earlier. So, so I will go with the Michigan to win that one, but playing Mount St. Mary's in the first round. Then another 8-9 matchup here. LSU, who really came that close to beating Alabama for the SEC championship, against number 9 St. Bonaventure, who we just mentioned here a few minutes ago, who beat VCU in the championship there for their division, which is, I think we looked it up, wasn't it? Was that Atlantic 10? That's right. And this one, this is a close one, but this is one I'll take the 9 over the 8. I think LSU really left it out on the floor there. Obviously, there's going to be almost a full week between games here for LSU to get back up in there and stuff. But I think the Monties win this one. I think they're really a solid team. Of course, it's going to be different when you go from a Power 5 team to the Atlantic 10. There's a big difference there in schedule and stuff and everything there, and toughness of schedule through the year and everything. But this is one where I'm going to go with the smaller team here, or smaller as far as everything else goes there, as far as record, or not record, but as far as reputation and stuff at this point in the season. But yeah, again, LSU will be a dangerous team to come up here against the first round. And potentially looking for blood after their loss, literally in the last few seconds there to Alabama. All right, then you got number 5 seed Colorado against Georgetown. We just mentioned Georgetown was your more or less completely out of nowhere winner from the Big East, and the Big East is all fucked up this year. Between Villanova all of a sudden, losing 2 of their key players in the last couple of weeks, having some huge losses to Butler and Creighton. In the season. Obviously, Creighton is, they're like probably the 2 or 3 for the Big East as far as if you rank them and stuff. They're way up there. But still, there's all sorts of stuff that happened all through the Big East. And Big East is always really fun to watch in that way, where it's like a lot of ups and downs for a lot of teams in the season, But still, you'll have the Colorado, who's more or less been championed as probably the best of the Pac-12 this year. So I think if anybody has a chance to go that far this year from the Pac-12, I think it is Colorado that you probably put your money on. If not them, then you can go. Let's see. I think some people I've seen think Oregon can hang in there. So potentially Oregon, but again, I would probably say if you're a big Pac-12 fan or you're thinking they're going to do some damage this year, they probably do it here in this bracket with Colorado. And so I have them beating Georgetown. But again, I think Georgetown, after all the momentum here, they've got a lot of it here. Big surprise winner in their conference. Colorado, the more or less expected winner, losing in the conference championship game. So, that could outweigh it, and then you could see Georgetown advance. And this is one I did bounce back and forth between, okay, do I pick the 5 or do I pick the 12? But yeah, this is one where I think I'll go with the 5. But again, very potentially could be an overtime game or one that's decided in the last 3 minutes or less. Let's see, then you move on to the 4 and 13, and that's going to be Florida State against UNCG, and that's, I forget what the acronym stands for. Probably Florida State here. I think the ACC is another one that was all screwed up this year with Duke not being the expected big time matchup there through the season and stuff. They had good players, but I just don't think as a team they played together very well. We're going to mention that with another team coming up here. And actually I looked at it. It's the first time Duke has not been in the tournament since '95. So since I've been born, they've been in the tournament every year. Now this is the first time they don't show up. Obviously, barring the exception last year when nobody made the tournament because they didn't fucking have a tournament because of goddamn COVID. All right. But I think Florida State, again, when you're looking at ACC teams, again, if anybody's going to do a lot of damage this year, you probably, again, look to this bracket and you probably look to Florida State. All right, then you got number 6, BYU against an 11-seed matchup. That'll be Michigan State or UCLA. This is the one I want to mention because Michigan State, I remember early on, they did very well, won every non-conference game to start out the Big Ten, then lost 3 in a row. They were somehow still ranked like 20 in the 20 to 25 range all through. I'm like, bullshit. They're not that great? It's like, especially when you come to Big Ten, it's like other than a couple of teams there, their non-conference games are easy. Most of the time, they'll go undefeated in them, or if not undefeated, they'll only lose 1. Minnesota, who had a really good reputation up until about, just after the halfway point of the season here, they had an undefeated non-conference season there. Quite a few other teams have that, record there. But still, with the way Michigan State started losing everything, I'm like, wow, they've got good players on there like Watts and Langford and a few others there. But it's like, yeah, they're just not really, and this is kind of my side of it at least. Early on when I'm like, they're not really functioning together as a team, though. You got, a couple of people who are kind of fighting for the alpha kind of, top dog position there, and Izzo can't really get them under control there. And then I think we finally saw, as we got into the last few weeks, right at the last minute, them, Duke, and arguably in some ways Kentucky, all of a sudden, Kentucky, another one that hasn't been in the game for a long, long time here. Or for the first time first time in many, many, many years where they haven't been in the conference or in the March Madness tournament rather. And yeah, all of a sudden Michigan State, here they came and they beat Ohio State, beat Michigan. All sorts of great wins going into the last stretch there. Exited early in the Big Ten tournament, but still with their squad there, I think they've got actually a decent shot. Not only of beating UCLA, I think they'll beat UCLA, and this might be the easiest. Potentially. Obviously, I could be dead wrong, but they might have the easiest matchup of these first 4. And again, that's nothing against Pac-12 or UCLA or anything, but it's like Michigan State. They've got so many good wins under their belt. Sure, some embarrassing ones too, but still, I think they're a solid team there. And I think this is the one I'm going to pick the 11 over the 6 here. So the official prediction is Michigan State. And then I looked at it again. It's like, okay, well, if it is UCLA that happens to win against Michigan State, can they take BYU? I think so, yes. So I will, regardless, it is going to be the 11 over the 6 for me here. And BYU, I'll give them credit, though. When they played Gonzaga the second time for that championship, and I forget if it's Big West or Mountain West or whatever the conference is, whatever the name of it is, they only Gonzaga only beat them by 10 points, which is one of the closest margins this year for a Gonzaga team. So yeah, so that's one. Oh yeah, I was gonna say yeah. Kansas did play. Now that I think about it, Kansas did play Gonzaga early on, and yeah, the Zags beat them by again single digits or like 10 or 11 or was in that range. One of their more fairly close competitions there. All right, then you go up against next to number 3 Texas against number 14 Abilene Christian. Abilene Christian is a really solid, high-scoring team here. Texas, for the most part, has been a high-scoring team as well. And again, very talented team under Shaka Smart, who is probably in the discussion for best team or best coach right now in the Big 12. And other than I don't know the guy's name, but the guy who coaches Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is wow, great team too. I mean, obviously you got Cade Cunningham, but it's like the rest of the players there, Likely and quite a few others there. I can name 2, but I can't name more than that unless it's a team that I really, really, really follow closely. But still, yeah, Texas is a dangerous team. The first time they've won a Big 12 championship here, conference championship. Or tournament championship, I should say. Yeah, they're a dangerous team to go up against this year. So I think they beat Abilene Christian. It could be one of the higher scoring matches here in the first round, potentially. Other than, the Zags. Obviously, they, not to say they don't play defense, but they just score a lot of damn points every game. So, barring one of those, 1-seed ones, yeah, I think this one could be a higher scoring match. But Texas, I think, will handle them. Then you get number 7 UConn against Maryland, and Maryland, another battle-hard team here in the Big Ten, and UConn, another battle-hard team in the Big East. This is going to be a pretty exciting 7-10 matchup here. I am, maybe just because I'm more favorable to the Big Ten, I am picking Maryland here, but again, watch out for this one to be another very close matchup here. UConn got a lot of spirit in them, and definitely they've gotten some very nice wins here, not only in conference, but really a solid resume they've put together here. And it's Maryland is a team to watch for. They almost beat Michigan there in the Big Ten tournament. So yeah, they're dangerous too. The Terrapins there. All right, then you get the number 2 seed against Alabama against number 15 Iona. Remember, Iona was the 8th seed in the forget which conference, the MAC conference. That's right, MAC. That one in Georgetown, the only 2 8 seeds this year to win their whole conference tourney there. So Iona, if it is going to happen to be anywhere where we see the 15 over the 2 this year, I think my money's on this one being the one to do it, but I think Alabama's strong enough to overcome it. I think this might be one where we see Iona leading into halftime, maybe even leading up until about the last 10 minutes of the game or so. But I think Alabama, they, proving it in their last game there Sunday against LSU, they know how to close a game. They know definitely the same thing happened. I can't remember who it was they played just before LSU. Was it Missouri? No, not Missouri. Because I think LSU beat Arkansas to get to the championship game there for SEC. But whoever it was that Alabama played right before LSU in the SEC tournament, I don't know, unless maybe they got in. I'm trying to think. It was Tennessee. Yeah, it had to be Tennessee. That's right. Tennessee is a team. They've been all over the roadmap this year in SEC. We'll get to them. They're in a different bracket here, a different part of the bracket. And yeah, they're one where it's like if they're hitting from 3 and they can really do it, yeah, then they'll win almost every time. Alabama, though, we've seen a couple times this year. I believe against Missouri once where. They were down. Alabama was down like 21 points or something. They came back to lose by only 2 or something or 3 in the last couple minutes there. So Alabama's a team that, and I believe both against Tennessee and LSU, they did trail. Definitely Tennessee. I remember they trailed quite a bit. There was like 16 or 17, came back and won. So Alabama is not a team to sleep on for. If they start losing early, that doesn't mean give up on them. No, absolutely not. So, I think Alabama is one of those teams that knows how to close. So, potentially in a very close matchup there, the 2 against the 15. I still pick the 2, but Alabama is probably the winner there. All right, now let's go to the number 1 against. I have the 9 seed here, St. Bonaventure. So that's Michigan against the Bonnies. I'll tell you what, this is there's almost always every year a 1 seed that goes out second round. It's pretty. I mean, again, I say that sometimes, but it's like more often than not, you'll see the one seeds almost all advance to at least the Sweet 16. Sometimes the 2 or the 1 or sometimes the 3 even will lose first or second round. But this is one where I can see Michigan going out early. They don't have livers. They're definitely, I think, they were lacking there against Ohio State to go into, it was Ohio State. Yep, lacking against Ohio State there to get to that championship game, where they would have played either Iowa or Illinois. Obviously, Illinois won that one, but we'll get into that later. Then you have Michigan. So I think Michigan is a team. Again, it's like here in the last couple of weeks, it's like they do have some losses, like to Michigan State and to we just mentioned Ohio State, and they've also lost to relatively early in the game in the season there Minnesota. That was their first loss of the season. Keep in mind though, again, somebody follows the Big Ten. Minnesota only until the end when they started losing. Start with a K. Again, I follow these guys a lot. Robbins, and they lost Kauscher, Gabe Kauscher. Both of them pretty much didn't play like the last 5-6 games of the season, or maybe even more than that. And that's like almost every one was a loss without those two. But before that, it was like only one, I think, up till Maryland, when they played Maryland at the barn there in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, they won every single one of their home games. But as soon as they would go on the road, that's all their losses were on the road this year. Up until that point. Obviously, then they lost a couple at home, but still. Minnesota was a dangerous team at home early on in the season, and Michigan was the first one to really say, "Oh wow, yeah, that's definitely for sure." Iowa lost to them at the barn too. So, anyways, but still, I see Michigan exiting early here with that one. So I have the Bonnies advancing to the Sweet 16. All right, then you get the number 5 Colorado against number 4 not Michigan State, Florida State. I don't have Michigan State winning. They're clear down in a different one there. But yeah, that one I can see Florida State winning. Again, a little bit more battle hardened than Colorado. But again, I've seen a lot of people think Colorado can go all the way to face either Michigan or St. Bonaventure or LSU in that Sweet 16 matchup. Okay, otherwise the other two games in the second round here on the East bracket, I do have, again, just my prediction is Michigan State going up against Texas. I think Texas wins that one, yeah. So I have them advancing, and then you'll have Maryland against Alabama, and I think really I like Alabama against Maryland better than, say, Alabama against UConn, but I think either way Alabama would win, and I think against Maryland they'll do well, and maybe a little bit slightly better. All right, then you'll move on to the Sweet 16 round, where I do have St. Bonaventure against Florida State. This is the one I think the Seminoles will come back and a relatively shorter Cinderella story for the Bonnies there. But again, the Bonnies and maybe one other team here that's kind of less than a 9, kind of in the bottom of their seating there, so that's 9 or lower, kind of in the bottom half there. I think them and maybe one or two others really have a decent shot of going Sweet 16, maybe even Elite 8 this year. And Bonnies are definitely one of them. But I have Florida State winning that one. Potentially, again, in a very close matchup there. Then you have, Texas against Alabama there in the Sweet 16 round here for this part of the bracket in the East. And I'll take Texas here. I'll take the Longhorns. Yeah, they've gotten some great wins against a lot of teams this year. Kansas, I believe at Kansas they beat them. That's, again, when Kansas was kind of struggling there for a while. They've beaten Baylor. Or did they beat Baylor? Or was it? No, Oklahoma State I know for sure they beat because they beat them in the championship for Big 12 tourney. But I believe it was... No, Oregon State beat Baylor at the end. That's who I was thinking of. But unless somebody correct me there, if Texas did beat Baylor, and I'm just forgetting it earlier in the season. I'm going to take Texas over Alabama. I think definitely the Roll Tide will roll for a while there, and they could. I mean, if they really hit their stride, watch out for them just to be the one that gets to the Final Four here for this part of the bracket. But then we'll get Florida State against Texas by my odds, and again, I like Texas in that one. Hook 'em horns, and I think they will be the second one to punch their ticket, and not chronologically, but just in this little thing here, second one to punch their ticket to the Final Four. All right, halfway there, we'll go to the South bracket now. And here we have on the 116 Baylor and Hartford. So Yeah, Baylor. Hartford, it was fun to watch them here. They were the champions of the, I'll see if it comes up with it, American East, I believe, conference. And I mean, pretty strong record there. So they're ones that, again, and maybe in the opening minutes give Baylor some trouble. And it's, again, not uncommon, even for Zags and some of these other almost always one seeds, to trail at halftime or be down by just or ups rather by just like 5 or fewer points. And Hartford might be the ones that get a little bit of advantage there early against Baylor. But yeah, Baylor in the second half, as long as they can get out of the gates and start going quickly, yeah, they're going to win almost every time. Then you'll have number 8 against number 9 here, and this one that's North Carolina 8 seed, Wisconsin 9 seed. This one I think is a little bit more decisive for me. The Oklahoma and Missouri game I thought was really close to decide. LSU St. Bonnie's was really close too. This one I'm way easier. Wisconsin. I think it's Wisconsin here. They did, they've got some impressive wins this year. They, again, have some losses where it's like, oof, they didn't look good. Right when Illinois started getting into their stride, going into about the last month of regular conference play for Big Ten, Wisconsin got beat by Illinois by close to 20 points or something. And Wisconsin at that point had always been rated every week, I think, for the most part. Like, their most embarrassing loss to that point was Marquette, and obviously that was an upset. But it's like most of the time Wisconsin would only lose by a few, but to lose by that many, obviously it's Illinois, who is really looking really sharp right now going into the tournament. I think Wisconsin can hang. I mean, they almost beat Iowa a couple times there, so they're a dangerous team. And yeah, I think the Cheeseheads will definitely celebrate in a win there. And you got North Carolina, who's, again, very much been up and down in the ACC, so I think that is Wisconsin's to lose. And I think probably a little bit more decisively. I think the other 8-9 matchup I think will be a pretty decisive one too. Arguably maybe a bit more than this, but we'll see. It's always really tough with these 8-9s. Okay, then we'll go to the number 5 and 12 matchup. This is Villanova against Winthrop. I think Winthrop handily, possibly. We could see Villanova exit here as a 5 seed. Exit quickly and almost embarrassingly, potentially, because again, after losing, I just had his name, Gillespie, Colin Gillespie, or Gillespie, however you pronounce his name. After losing him, after I believe it was the Butler game was the last one he played in, or right before that, whatever it was. And then their first round loss and got, not walloped, but, losing to Georgetown. And that was actually one I picked. I picked the upset there, Georgetown over Villanova, because I was like, yeah, it's like Villanova is losing their stride here, losing to Butler in the last couple of weeks of regular conference play, and then losing, Gillespie and stuff. And then they lost another player whose name is escaping me, but he has another injury that's, I don't think he's out, but definitely looks unlikely to play here in the tournament. And obviously Gillespie, that's not a career-ending injury by any means. But it's like, yeah, Villanova is not as sharp as they have been through most of the season, where they've been a projected 1 seed for a long, long time, and now they fell all the way to a 5. And I was even surprised they fell that low. Or that high, rather. I was thinking they might be closer to a 6-7 seed the way they lost to Georgetown there. Obviously, if they'd lost to Georgetown by like 10 or 20, it would have been a totally different story. But losing, kind of on a buzzer beater that just didn't fall for them there against Georgetown. It's still a loss to Georgetown, the 8 seed. You were the one in the Big East. So I think Winthrop handles them, absolutely. Yeah, we'll see. But they've got a 23-1 record out of the, I'm not sure which, it's BSOU, so I don't know what that, Big South or whatever? I think Big South, yeah. Maybe just the better record, but still. And obviously definitely a less competitive conference. But, yeah, I think Winthrop there. All right, then we have number 4, Purdue against North Texas. Purdue, even though they exited early in the Big Ten Conference against Ohio State, I did, again, call Ohio State over Purdue that game, just because Purdue had swept Ohio State in the regular season, and it's really, there's an old adage, very, very tough to beat the same team 3 times when you're, more or less the underdog in the match. Even though Purdue had a higher seeding, both here, not here, but particularly because Ohio State's a 2 seed here in this bracket. But they were higher seeded than Ohio State was in the Big Ten tournament. So I think Purdue wins this one though. They've got a pretty good squad there. They've got Edey, who is like kind of like Taco a few years ago there at Florida State. I remember that year I picked Florida State to win the first one just because they had Taco. It's like, oh, the guy was like, what was he, like 7'6" or whatever, something ridiculous. And you got Edie, who's like 7'3", 7'4". And you got Ivy, you got, a lot of, again, sorry, I can only name two, but, they got, he's like Stefanovic or whatever. It's it's a longer name. He's definitely one to watch out for. He's had a rough kind of. He had COVID somewhere in the middle of the season, so he had it rough after that. But then I remember Nebraska, that game when Purdue played him kind of later in the season. He got like, what was it, 4 threes or something ridiculous. He all of a sudden he turned on after getting like 2 points a game or averaging 2 points a game for like a long stretch there, like 6-7 games, whatever the hell it was. But against North Texas, I'll pick Purdue. All right, and then you have the Texas Tech Red Raiders, right? I forget what their nickname is there, against Utah State. Utah State is one definitely that was one to watch for there in their conference. But, Texas Tech, they've got some good players there. I'm forgetting his name, but it'll come to me later. But McClung, Matt McClung, or Pat McClung, whatever his first name is, Mac McClung. So it's one of those. McClung, they just call him McClung. McClung is great. Watch out for him from beyond the arc, and I think he can lead the Raiders there to a first victory there. Then you'll have the number 3 seed Arkansas against Colgate. This is actually one a lot of people think Arkansas is going to exit early after their fairly disappointing result there in the SEC tournament, where they were the 2 seed and they lost to LSU in a upset there in the semifinals. I still pick Arkansas here. I think the Razorbacks will win this one. Colgate, if again, the 3-14 matchups here this year, if you're not doing, let's see, there's another one. Yeah, that one I don't quite think so. But if you're gonna pick a 14/3 this year, this is probably the most likely place. Arguably, again, unless you want to go Abilene Christian over Texas, but I don't think so. So I would say, if anything, that's the second most likely, and that's with a big distance there. Obviously, McConaughey would come punch me in the face right now if he thought I was making that equivalency, but still, because he's a big Texas fan. But I'll pick Arkansas here. All right, then you'll have another dangerous 7-10 lineup here. That's Florida, Virginia Tech. That's a close one. Virginia Tech, I haven't seen a whole bunch from this year. Florida, I've only seen a couple games. They beat. I remember they beat Missouri kind of relatively early when Missouri was kind of going on a tear there. So I was like, oh, so Florida's really hanging in there. And then they lost like three of their next 4 or something ridiculous like that. And they've kind of had a bumpier road since then. But still, I'm going to go just by maybe the Gators' teeth here. I'm going to go with Florida here. Again, watch out for this one to be one that's decided only in the last couple minutes or so. And then you got number 2 seed Ohio State against Oral Roberts, who was more or less a surprise winner in the Summit Conference. That's another one. Some of the teams are a little more local for me. So you got like the Jackrabbits and the Coyotes and the Bison from NDSU. It was a heartbreaker. I predicted Oral Roberts over NDSU, and NDSU just couldn't quite pull it off. So, Oral Roberts, they're one to watch for, but against Ohio State, who really hit a strong mark there quite a ways, pretty far into the regular conference season there, where they were projected to be 1 seed. Then they lost like 4 in a row to Iowa and Michigan State, which was another one. I was so glad I called both of those upsets to lose, Ohio State to lose both of those. That was right. And then Michigan, and because Michigan, when they lost to Michigan the first time, it was like 5. It was only like a 5-point thing. And that was a close one. I did pick Michigan to win that one, but I remember I was like, man, Ohio State's dangerous. And it was like, that was kind of the first one. And then they lost to Iowa, I believe, if I'm getting this sequentially right. Then they lost to Michigan State and whoever the fourth one was, but maybe it'll come to me later. But it was like, they lost 4 in a row. They're kind of leading up to Big Ten tournament, which kind of projected them at a lower seed all of a sudden. But then they came back, and it's like, I think they're going to continue that strength right now. And I think my sister, for example, she's picking Ohio State to win the whole thing. So watch out for Ohio State there, absolutely. All right, then going into the second round matchup here for the South bracket, Baylor against Wisconsin. I think this is Baylor. Baylor, again, kind of going in the last few weeks here, losing to Kansas and then losing to Oklahoma State. That's only 3 losses on the season, if I remember correctly. Or no, sorry, two. Those two. I'm sorry. I was thinking 3 losses. Michigan has 3 losses, if I remember right now. But yeah, Baylor though. Even though those 2 losses came, obviously they had the COVID break, and then they came back, and it's like they really struggled against Iowa State, who's unfortunately they're probably the weakest link there in the Big 12, and obviously they weren't going to come close. And Prohm, we all knew was going to be gone, but still, yeah, that was still one where it's like, okay, that was kind of like watch out, Baylor. And then they played Kansas, and it was like, yeah, Kansas not blew them out of the water completely, but definitely beat them handily there. Then Baylor started coming back, and now, yeah, since then their only loss has been to Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State is a really dangerous team to watch out for. We'll get to them in the next bracket here, but yeah, I think Baylor wins this one though, and I think can definitely start to regain their momentum there. All right, then you'll have the number 12 by my projections here, Winthrop against Purdue. This might be. I don't want to, try to exaggerate a little bit. This might be a 2 overtime game. This might be one that just goes that far. Who knows? Maybe Purdue or Winthrop just, blows them out of the water again easily. But I do pick Purdue here, but I think this is just one, again, where the conference schedule, will do it out. But Winthrop, I think if you're not going to say the Bonnies or one other team that we'll get to here in a little bit, they're not under the 8. They're not 9 or lower. But there's another one I'll talk about here maybe in a minute that might do that. But I think the popular picks for like a 12 seed or in the case of St. Bonaventure a 9 seed or something lower than 9 or lower to go to Sweet 16 or further. I think the most likely ones, I think from what I've seen, just a little bit here, you're either picking Santa Barbara, you're picking the Bonnies, like I am, to go to the Sweet 16, or you're picking potentially, I've seen a couple people think Michigan State can hang in there a little ways. I don't know, against Texas, I don't think so, but they're thinking if it's Abilene Christian over Texas. I think a couple of those I've seen. Maybe Iona gets 2 wins, but I don't think so. But I think, I think Winthrop is the one, if anybody's going to do it, I think it's them or the Bonnies that do it. But again, I'll pick Purdue here. Okay, then moving on to the 6 against the 3 by my odds, that's going to be Arkansas, Texas Tech. Arkansas here, yeah. I think maybe not decidedly, but I think Arkansas there. And then you'll have Florida against Ohio State by my measures there. And I think Ohio State can handle Florida there, so they'll move on, the Buckeyes there. All right, so then you'll go to the Sweet 16 with Baylor Purdue. And again, watch out for a really dangerous, close matchup there, potentially. But I think Baylor will be pretty solid there with their elite lineup there with Butler and with the rest of the squad there. There was one Teague and Chachua. I've heard his name 600 times, but I can. It's one of those that's like you read it and it's like, what the fuck? I don't know. It's almost like it's not as bad as from Seton Hall. Mumamishvili or whatever. No, there's like tons of Vilis in there this year. You got like Bujanishvili or whatever from Illinois. You've got the guy. It's like his name was like the last name was like 30 letters or whatever from Seton Hall. He's probably got the championship belt this year for hardest to pronounce last name, but still, I think Baylor wins that one, but again, very close. Definitely might again come down to potentially overtime, but definitely last 3 minutes or less. Okay, then the other Sweet 16 matchup here I have is Arkansas, Ohio State. Again, I'll pick the Buckeyes here, and I think Arkansas, they'll play well up to that point, but I think maybe there's a chance. Obviously, there'll be a lot of, some time in between there, between second and third round, but I think Arkansas might be a little exhausted by that point. So then you'll have Baylor, Ohio State. And this is one where I can definitely see, okay, if Ohio State keeps on the having the intensity and the matchups that they have right now, if they can continue that, then they can handle Baylor. Personally, I think, even though I think they'll go past the Razorbacks, I think, if my bracket's absolutely correct, which it probably isn't, but at least in this part, if it's correct, they'll get by Arkansas. But I think against Baylor, if Baylor again really starts, if they beat Purdue, I think they can, again, really start building up their steam and their momentum again, and watch out for Baylor to be the team to win there. But again, that's a close one. That's one where I can definitely see Ohio State getting into the Final Four and potentially rematching with Illinois for the fourth matchup this year. That rarely happens. in all of college basketball. But if it's going to happen this year, it'll be those two. But I am going to pick Baylor. I think they advance, and they're the champions of the the South bracket, going to the Final Four. Okay, that only leaves the Midwest bracket here. And in the first round, you'll have Illinois against Drexel. Sorry, Drexel, but Illinois. Illinois got this one, I think. Again, they have hit such a stride right now in this last stretch. And again, after they beat Wisconsin, too. Really strange, though, because I remember after that, they played Nebraska that next game at Nebraska, at Lincoln. And Nebraska, I'm sorry, again, Hawkeyes fan, there's always a huge rivalry between Iowa and Nebraska. But yeah, fuck the Huskers. I always say that just as a joke, but we've got some extended family that are Huskers fans. And actually one that went to school at Lincoln. Obviously, she wasn't big into sports and stuff, but yeah, I mean, she got enough of the gear and stuff. But I think she knows down deep that it's not a great sports team unless it's volleyball. I'll give them credit for volleyball, but still, Illinois went to Nebraska there, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, Illinois struggled there. And obviously it's Nebraska at home, and they're another one like Minnesota where they'll play decently at home. I mean, almost all. I think both their two or three wins this season in regular conference, I believe, were both at home. I don't think they beat anybody on the road here, if I remember right. But again, I'm no huge Nebraska expert. I just see how much they lose by and move on and laugh. But still. But yeah, Illinois, they forced an overtime game against Illinois there. I remember I was like sitting there just shocked. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, how can Illinois go from, beating Wisconsin this heavily to almost losing to fucking Nebraska? It's like that shouldn't even compute. But there they were. It was a close matchup there. And after that, I'm like, I started thinking, well, I think Illinois loses the next one, and they didn't. I think Illinois loses the next one, they didn't. And finally, they did lose to not Michigan. Whoever it was, yeah, they beat them. It was like a 20-point loss, and I can't remember who it was right now. Maybe it was Michigan, but it was like a huge, huge loss. It'll come to me later, maybe, but still, yeah, it was like a huge, huge loss and a huge upset. So I'm like, I was late, but I knew they were vulnerable. And then after that, they've never looked back. Brad Underwood has really became, I think, other than I'll say it, yeah, other than Juwan Howard, I think he's the one. He's probably the best coach right now in Big Ten. I know Fran McCaffrey, but Fran can be a little temperamental, so I don't really see him as the best coach. But still, and obviously Underwood always looks like he's pissed off. But still, I think the way he's got this squad between Cockburn and DeSumo and Frazier and Bajanesvili when he's hot, and all these all the rest of the bench there. He's got a deep bench. He's got a solid team. He's got potentially some Player of the Year contenders with Cockburn and DeSumo. And again, they are probably other than Gonzaga, they are the scariest team right now to go into and play in March Madness tournament. So Drexel, sorry, but you're going to go pretty quick there, unfortunately. Okay, then you'll have 8 and 9 seed here. Loyola Chicago is the 8 seed. Georgia Tech is the 9. Georgia Tech, the winner of the ACC, in a pretty surprising result there. And Loyola Chicago, who had some losses early, but then really came back and beat Drake twice, once or twice. Definitely twice, because they beat him in the Missouri Valley Conference Championship. But I believe beat him at least once in the yeah, they split that one, right? That was one where they had a makeup game. So like Drake played him, and Loyola Chicago beat him, and I believe that was the first loss for Drake of the season. Then Drake came back to barely beat them the next day when they did back-to-back matchups there, which some other teams have done that this year. Like I remember Michigan playing Michigan State. They played both those games, I think, within the space of 2 or 3 days or something too. Which again, we've seen that kind of this year. It's like usually it's a split. Usually one team wins, and then the next day the other team wins, or the 2 days later, whatever it is. The exception, again, that I can remember is Maryland beating Nebraska twice at home, 2 days in a row. Rough, but still. In this matchup, even though Georgia Tech seems to have quite a bit of buzz going about them after that ACC win against Florida State, or whoever it was, I thought it was Florida State, but I can't remember now. I think it's Loyola Chicago. Sister Jean, I read, 101-year-old nun who, I remember just a few years ago, 2018, I remember I watched Loyola Chicago, and they were, what were they, an 11 seed that year, or a 7 or something? I was confused, because the year before that, again, that was the year I followed it on the radio there, you had 7 seed South Carolina, the huge upset, ones that went all the way to the Final Four and almost won to go to the championship, against North Carolina there. Yeah, that was a really, really exciting, all of a sudden out of the blue team. And when they beat Duke, I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, they're one to watch for. And it's like I remember that next day on the radio we talked about it because the guy I was working with, the co-host there, he ran the show, but I was kind of more the color commentary, if you will, because he was definitely has more experience than I do. But yeah, he was definitely one, and we talked about it privately off air and stuff. We're like, Duke should not. That year they were 2 seed. We're like, Duke should not be a two seed because they had again kind of some ups and downs that season. I remember, and I was like, I said I would not be shocked. Not that particular game, but I thought like maybe the game after that in the Sweet 16. I was like they might lose that one, but no, they lost second round that year to that one. And then so I was like that was always surprising. So after that next round, I'm like yeah, South Carolina they had the great win, but they won't win. And the next game, then they won the next game, and then after that I'm like nope, I'm just picking them the whole rest of the way up until a certain point. But yeah, that was great to watch. And then Loyola Chicago got the same thing, got to the Final Four that next year, 2018. And they were super exciting to watch, an 11 seed. And I had a cousin, I think she just moved, but she was in Chicago for a long time. And I mean, she actually was back home when they were playing. I think it was their Final Four game. And yeah, I mean, it was like Easter or something. We had all the family over, extended family, and yeah, everybody was rooting for Loyola Chicago that game. And yeah, Sister Jean, who stole everybody's hearts that year, the 100 at the time, I think she was 99. Now she's 101 or whatever the math is. Fuck it, 98. Now she's 101 and fully vaccinated. She's going to the game. All right, I'll be looking for her there. Absolutely. Of course, I'm sure they'll highlight her. I'm sure, but still. As long as I can watch the game. If it's during the day on Friday, I might miss it because I've got to work for a living. But still, Loyola Chicago, I think they will win that, at least that first round. Obviously, then they run into the huge buzzsaw that will be Illinois. So that would be a monster upset, particularly for my bracket. Not to give too much away early, but that would be a massive upset. But I don't think. I don't know. I haven't seen a bunch of them this year, but I don't know if they'll have the strength that they had there 3 years ago when they had their best season ever as far as March Madness goes. But again, that's one I'm taking. So I'm taking, I believe, 50-50. I'm splitting them between the eights and the 9s this year. But yeah, I definitely know some people will pick all 9s or all 8s, but definitely, it behooves you to at least pick one 9 seed. But yeah, I'm going to go the 8 seed here. All right, then you go to number 5, Tennessee, against number 12, Oregon State. And Tennessee played some of their best ball of the second half of the season there when they played Alabama, and definitely just about blew that game wide open. But Alabama came back and won. So I think Tennessee, even though they played that well, I'm going an upset here, and I'm picking the 12 over the 5 as well here with Oregon State winning here. But again, watch for this one to be close. I know it's Pac-12, Oregon State, and I think this is the one where I think they will have the momentum off of the tournament win to keep going. And Tennessee, I think if they're just not hitting, and they've had some games earlier in the season. I think there was a couple games where I think they scored under 50 or something. It was like a very poor performance a couple of times here in the season. If this is one of those games, I'm not predicting it will be that low scoring for them. But if it is like a 60-55 or a 60-54 or 60-56, type score somewhere in that range, or maybe a little higher or lower than that for the winning team, yeah, I would definitely say don't favor Tennessee if it's the scoring is that low. Either they're going to score a lot or they're going to lose and not score much at all. But yeah, I'm picking Oregon State there. All right, then you'll have number 4, Oklahoma State against Liberty, where you got Cade Cunningham, the number 1 projected NBA draft this year. And Cade Cunningham is fantastic to watch, by the way. Yeah, like I said, likely. You got Anderson. You've got there's a guy. He's got the 2 last names. He's fantastic too. But not just because obviously through most of the season, I remember my brother. He really is high, not high, but he'll get some betting on the side there for college basketball, and he was like almost all through the season he was taking Oklahoma State because they got Cade Cunningham. He would say he's the number 1 NBA draft, so you got to pick him. I'm like. I remember there was one time he was over and I was like, well, I think Kansas wins this one. It was Kansas and Oklahoma State. He's like, yeah, bullshit. Baylor. So it was Baylor or Oklahoma State. I believe the first time. Yeah, it had to be the first time they matched up or something. He's like, oh, bullshit. It's going to be Oklahoma State. It's going to be a massive upset. They got Cade Cunningham. He was all about it. I was like, nah, I don't think so. And yeah, then after that, I think then Oklahoma State, they got great wins through the season. beat Texas. They've beaten, like we mentioned, Baylor. They've topped almost everybody. West Virginia twice in the final stretch there. And once without Kate Cunningham. So again, that's a real show for how strong that the rest of the team is without the number one NBA draft there. So Oklahoma State is one you better pick them for at least a little ways into the tournament there. And I think they're a very solid team here. So I'm picking them over Liberty. Okay, then you have the 6 and the 11. I'll go the 6 here. This is San Diego State Syracuse, by the way. And I think Syracuse, they were very much a bubble team, kind of like Michigan State and who was the other one there? That was a bubble that got in. Everybody was shocked by. I think it was UCLA or one of those. I think it was UCLA or them or Wichita State. Wichita State, I think. Yeah, I remember Lenardi, which I kind of pay attention to him some when it's relevant. But no, yeah, he's obviously the big, huge guy that almost always gets 98, 97% accuracy when it comes to the brackets here. He had Wichita State out after they lost to again. I keep wanting to say it's Memphis. It might have been Memphis, but whoever it was there. No, it couldn't have been Memphis because. It was Cincinnati. Yeah, Cincinnati beat Wichita State. That's right. And then it was, Cincinnati against Houston there in the American championship there. That's right. Conference championship, I should say. But yeah, Syracuse, they were such a bubble team. I mean, they've had some good wins again this season, but not one I would bet on. No, absolutely not. I go San Diego State there. All right, down to the three last ones here of the first round. Here in the Midwest bracket, we've got West Virginia against Morehead State. The Eagles, glad they got in there. Definitely, they were a team I watched a couple times at the end, but yeah, it's West Virginia. They got a pretty talented bench, pretty talented team there. All right, then we go 7 and 10, and as you've noticed here, this is another one I split between the 7s and the 10s. I have the 2 7s winning in Oregon and Florida. Then I have the 10s winning here. This will be Maryland on the other side, and here it's Clemson, Rutgers. Pick Rutgers. They got the stronger conference there. And Rutgers, I mean, early on, especially in the first, definitely the first half of the season, Rutgers was, I kept telling my brother, he's the other big guy into sports here in my immediate family, he's like, oh my God, I kept telling him, like, Rutgers, I'm not saying Final Four, but I'm like, Rutgers will go deep into the tournament. He's like, bullshit. He didn't predict. And it's like, yeah, they had a rough second half of the season compared to everybody else. But, look at what conference they're in. I mean, again, there's arguably Nebraska. There's no easy games in the Big Ten, and Rutgers. Unfortunately, that was the case for him here in the second half of the season, and kind of a disappointing result for him there. Obviously, in Big Ten tournament as well. But I think against Clemson, who I remember a lot of people got really excited about Clemson early on in the season, and they did well, but then they disappeared after they started losing. Other than Duke and maybe a couple other ones in the ACC, they really have not. They've been really missing from action. So I don't know how they got a 7 seed. Frankly, I haven't watched obviously any of them this season because I didn't have ACC Network, and that was the only channel that would put them on. Yeah, I'm going Rutgers here. I think it'll be 10 over the 7, and this one could be I think an easier matchup than we're thinking potentially. Okay, then the 2 against the 15 here, Houston against Cleveland State. Cleveland State, they were kind of rough to watch in that conference game, so I think this will be Houston pretty handily. But again, like we were mentioned there, that 2017 year, if there is a 2 seed that can't hang very long, if they're like Duke and it's like, wow, what are they doing ranked so high? It might be Houston because they, their closest competition, Memphis, who didn't get into the tournament here, but I thought stood a decent chance of beating them their last couple games. In fact, I did pick Memphis over them in the the American semifinals. Obviously, it didn't quite work out, but Memphis had them for a minute there. Then their best player, one of their best players, Williams or whoever. There's tons of Williams out there, so it's like. I think it was a Williams. He fouled out. He got his 5th foul 2 times. It was pretty bonkers last few minutes there. I remember that game. I was like, there's literally nothing else can happen in this game. Everything that could have happened pretty much has happened. I mean, it felt like that. Obviously, not every last thing, but you get what I mean. But still, if there is a 2 seed that falls early, I think Houston is the one. If not Alabama, Houston, I think. Iowa, pretty solid as a 2 seed. Ohio State, very solid as a 2 seed, maybe even higher than Iowa potentially there. But you look at the other two, it's like Alabama. I mean, if they have an off game, yeah, early on, that I can see them. Maybe not Maryland, but if it is UConn, maybe UConn can handle them potentially. And then it just really depends, though, on Houston. It's like, okay, do they get Clemson in the second round somehow, or do they get Rutgers? If it's Rutgers, I think it's I'll talk about that one in a minute here, but I think could be dangerous matchup there for them. Okay, so moving on to the second round here, I'll have number 1 Illinois against Loyola Chicago. I'm so sorry, Loyola, but yeah, I think it's Illinois to lose there. Yep, buzzsaw, like I said, buzzsaw. Okay, then Oregon State against Oklahoma State, the 12 against the 4. I think it is Oklahoma State, absolutely. Let's see, that those two could be potentially very easy matchups there for that for the second round. Then you go to San Diego State, West Virginia. I think this is again a pretty easy one. I think it's West Virginia against over the Aztecs there, or I think it's Aztecs, whatever their thing is. And then you'll have number 10 Rutgers against Houston. I think on paper seems like an easy call for Houston, and I do have Houston winning. But again, I think this, if Houston's going to fall early, I think it's probably not in the 15. No, not in the first round, but it's going to be here. It'll be a repeat of Duke there. But again, I think Rutgers, they've had just enough of a mixed track record there. I think, yeah, it's going to show there, and I think it's going to be Houston that wins that one. Okay, going into the Sweet 16 here in this bracket, we'll have Illinois against Oklahoma State, and this outside of an Elite Eight or a Final Four, this, if it does go this way, Illinois against Oklahoma State, this could be, other than Kansas, Iowa, I think, or potentially Baylor, Purdue. I think of those, I think this could be the closest matchup here that we get in any of these Sweet 16 games. This could be one that goes, again, 2 overtimes. This could be a very, very competitive match. Because both these teams, if they're really hot, they can score 80, 90 points, no problem. If they're really strong defensively and they don't always get a lot of offensive, they'll go a couple possessions each without scoring, it'll still be at least 65, maybe low 70s. They'll still score quite a bit here. I don't see this as like a 45-49 matchup or something, or 48 or whatever. So it's very close, and I think if I had looked at this again, I might have gone a different way here, but the way I'm picking it, it's going to be Illinois over Oklahoma State, and I think it's one to watch out for. A lot of brackets, if you're picking Illinois pretty far, that could be a bracket buster there. And potentially if you got Oklahoma State going pretty far, if you think they get to the Final Four, or maybe even the championship game somehow, I mean, not to say it's impossible, of course, but still, if you do have them going that far, that, again, could be a very easy bracket breaker for you. All right, then on the opposite side of that coin for the Sweet 16, West Virginia, Houston, I think this almost decidedly could be West Virginia. Houston, obviously, I think, they can score pretty well here, but I think it's West Virginia, again, more battle-hardened conference. They had tons of great wins against Texas Tech and Texas and a few others there. Kansas, I believe, they beat once at least. So, yeah, West Virginia for sure. However, if you do get a rematch between West Virginia and Oklahoma State, though, in the Elite Eight, that could be one where it's like, okay, I can see West Virginia getting some revenge there. But as I have it, I have Illinois, West Virginia in that Elite Eight matchup here to win this Midwest bracket. I think it's the Fighting Illini. I think it'll be Illinois. But again, that's really close because these are, again, probably the 2 most competitive conferences this year. All right, so I have that as the Final Four. Gonzaga, Texas, Baylor, Illinois going into the Final 4 games here. And that first game, Gonzaga, Texas, I think, obviously, other than a couple games in the non-conference one, Gonzaga is going to have their toughest game yet with Texas. Because I think they might have the easiest path of any of these 4 that I have predicted here. They might have the easiest path to get here, potentially. Especially if Michigan does go out, they don't do very well. And especially, again, if Florida State doesn't do so hot going into their round there, and it's Texas all the way there for the East bracket, they could have a little bit of an easier path here than maybe Zaga, potentially. But I think definitely those other 2, the Midwest and the South brackets, wow. I mean, Baylor, I think, is barely going to cling on and win. Illinois, potentially, even before they get to West Virginia, could have a huge, blow-for-blow matchup there against Oklahoma State. So, in this one, when you have the Zags against the Longhorns, I don't know. I think with this one, I go with the Zags. And I think I go with Gonzaga here by probably their slimmest margin yet. They could win by, I think, as few as 6 or 7 points. I think it very easily could be, or fewer even, possibly. Potentially could be an overtime type game or one that's decided in the last couple possessions. But yeah, I think there's just another thing we talk about with Illinois is how deep their benches and stuff, or how good their bench players are. Absolutely, maybe even more so for Gonzaga. They have arguably the best bench of the whole college basketball programs, and that also goes for starting five rather too. Absolutely. So I think it's the Zags going to the championship again. Then you'll have Illinois against Baylor, and here I am once again going to pick the Fighting Illini. I think they are really, again, going into this tournament, they're the ones that you gotta keep if you're Zaga, who's, I think most people are picking Zaga to win here this year. They're the ones in the rearview mirror that you're absolutely crossing your fingers that they somehow exit early. Because if you go up against them in the championship, it could be bad. We'll see. So I do have Illinois Gonzaga in the championship. But as far as this Baylor-Illinois matchup, again, watch out for this one to be a blow for blow, punch for punch, kick for kick. Huge matchup here, potentially. But again, I think Baylor, if they can get past Ohio State again, they might just, even though, again, there's going to be a lot of time between games, they might kind of leave it all out there on the floor to beat Ohio State. That's kind of my prediction there. So then we get Illinois Gonzaga in the championship game on the 5th of April. And here, again, like I said, a lot of people are picking Gonzaga, and it makes a lot of sense. Undefeated. Arguably the best starting five in college basketball. Almost definitely the best bench in college basketball. And if you look at it, the last time, a very interesting stat I saw here from ESPN, I think the day after the brackets came out, they said the last time you had Kentucky and Duke miss the tournament was 1976. That year, just so happened that the March Madness winner that year was an undefeated team. And I believe they were the last undefeated team to win the whole thing. And that just happened to be Indiana that year. I can't remember. That was 76, so I can't remember if that's Bobby Knight or not. I can't remember who was coaching that year. Maybe I think it was before Bobby Knight, but still, or it might have been. I don't know. I don't know the huge long history, but still, yeah, they were a dominant team that year. So, does history completely repeat itself this year with an undefeated team like Gonzaga winning the whole thing? It makes a lot of sense, right? No, I got to go Big Ten represent. I got to go Illinois here. I got to go Illinois to win the championship. Like I said, with that same tactic, you could say, well, the last time that you had Duke and Kentucky missed the tournament, it was a Big Ten team that won. So I'm going to say that's true this time with Illinois. And I think history, it'll come close, but it will not quite repeat itself here. So I have the Fighting Illini being your championships, college championships here this year. I think they're going to win the whole thing. You heard it here first. Obviously not, because I actually asked my mom. Again, she's probably, other than my brother, the one that's most into basketball in my immediate family. And she was like, she's like, you know what? She said, it made a lot of sense. She said, but I picked not Indiana. Sorry, they're not even playing. Yeah, that's a great write-in. Yeah, write-in for Indiana. But no, she picked Illinois too. She's like, wow. She said, I thought you were going to pick somebody else. I'm like, I thought so too. But the way Illinois played there, and they didn't shellac them, but the way they beat Iowa and then the way they clung on to Ohio State, who was definitely the scarier team going into that one. Wow. Yeah, that was, even though it took them overtime and stuff, that was the way they handled them in overtime too. Just absolutely the way to do it. And definitely the team that you got to watch for there. All right, so, and I remember the day the brackets came out, they tried to explain, because obviously in a COVID year, first of all, it's just great to have March Madness this year. We're less than 24 hours away from the launch of it with the first four matchups. Definitely we've seen some blowback from some players that are in the bubble right now, and it's like it's obviously going to be kind of stressful for a lot of these players this year. Number one, they've had a stressful season with games being canceled, postponed at the last minute. Stuff like that. You've definitely had, ups and downs with a lot of these teams, going on breaks with COVID and stuff, and they can't play for 2 weeks or 3 weeks in some cases. Obviously, certain players exit out, and then through injuries or through COVID positive things, then they're away from the team for a long time, like the guy we mentioned from Purdue there. So it's really a difficult season. Then on top of it, you have to come to Indianapolis and the whole area there to play all these games, and it's like it's been reported. It's like yep, pretty much how they're doing it is if you're not practicing with your teammates, you're in your room, you're locked away, you're alone, and it's like pretty much a prison. But it's like and I definitely can say for I haven't done that myself, but I can definitely relate and say wow, that's a really really terrible situation to be in and stuff, and really heartfelt and stuff. But it's like what, at least because as soon as obviously COVID came up, like almost literally as March Madness was about to happen, it was just a couple days away from Selection Sunday, a few days away, and they pulled the plug on it, and it was absolutely. I remember for us at sitting at home, last year. I mean, last year was a crazy nutso, just banana fucking year for college basketball because there were absolutely no front runners for who was going to win the whole tournament. This year, it's been Gonzaga, Baylor pretty much the whole time. If unless you're picking a more dark horse like Iowa potentially for me, a little ways there, or Ohio State or Illinois or some of these other ones that were kind of not always up in the top two teams, top two rankings, almost all through the season. But like last year, I mean, there was so much going on. There were so many games that were so fun to watch, and North Carolina, didn't have their best season at all last year. Duke was on and off last year. Kansas was on and off last year. I mean, so many teams. Even Gonzaga didn't have that solid lineup last year. And it was like, I remember we were getting in the last few weeks right before COVID broke, and we were all, as extended family who always does the pools here together, we were always like looking at each other like, who the hell are we going to pick? And everybody had a completely different answer. Some people thought Ohio State last year. Some people thought Gonzaga. Some people were thinking Kansas. Some people were thinking Baylor. Some people were picking because Baylor was really coming on strong toward the end there, so I think that they almost would have been the ones I went with. And up until the last few weeks here, Baylor was the one I was going to put my money on this year to win the whole thing. But still, it happens, and everything. So it's it was such a heartbreaker last year for all these super talented athletes to not be able to play, and for us fans at home who've been waiting all season, seeing all the craziness, the back and forths, and the heartbreaking losses and the surprise wins and everything, all of a sudden it's just gone. It's like it added up to shit, and it's like, oh, that's so frustrating. Again, I say definitely more so for the players and the coaching staff and the students and everything that go to all these games versus me, lazy ass sitting at home just watching all the games, flipping through them and stuff. But it was a loss for everybody. That's for damn sure. And so now this year, with everything going on, all the ups and downs, all the madness that has happened outside of March in the last 12 months. It's going to be exciting to get it back and to kind of more or less, even though it's not going to be the full crowd, it's not going to be, everybody will have masks on and stuff for the most part, unless you're a player, of course, and on the field or if you're announcing the game. But still, it's going to be different. But I think after it's over, and obviously the timeline of when the vaccines are going out and stuff will have a lot to do with this too. But it's like, when it's starting to get over, we get down to the last few, it's like it's almost going to start feeling like, okay, this COVID stuff, it's going to start really more and more so getting more in our rearview mirror. And I think, just personally speaking, I think we've definitely, not only as a nation here in the U.S., but definitely across the globe, we've definitely started making the turning point here against COVID. It's been a long time coming, but I'm really hoping that we're getting close to the end here. I always think of the quote. I mean, obviously, it doesn't spring from this directly, but The Dark Knight, when Alfred is talking with Bruce in the big scene after Joker escapes from prison and stuff, and we've seen Rachel die. Spoiler alert for a 13-year-old movie, but after that, arguably one of the more emotional scenes in the whole movie, where Bruce, kind of loses her and stuff, and it's like all that stuff. And Alfred has that quote, you always knew. I can't. I sound like Sean Connery when I'm trying to impersonate Michael Caine. Yeah, he's like, things are always going to get worse before they go better. I can't do a great accent of Michael Caine all the time, but they're a great impression of him rather. I always think that phrase just stuck in my mind for like the last year. I'm like, yep, things always get worse before they get better, especially with stuff like this. I mean, not that it's common, of course, but it's like, I think it's finally, we've seen after the vaccine really started kicking in, and after the kind of the final days of the surge there through the winter, we've begun to see the better finally start to come. And, we're almost averaging 2 million, in the U.S. here at least, 2 million vaccinations a day, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 million vaccinations every 2 days worldwide. So we're I think, really the light at the end of the tunnel is getting brighter and brighter, it seems, every day. For some people, maybe every hour. And this is a great sign that it's going to happen. Definitely. As we see March Madness return. And for me personally, too, seeing the movie theaters, in not just here, obviously in the Midwest, but in L.A. now and in New York, even though they're at very limited capacities right now, to see them at least open up, it's getting brighter, folks, every day. We're getting through it, man. I'm so glad that we are. And I wasn't one of those doom and gloomers that it's the end of the world, but still, it was like, it's a big change to go from, do whatever the hell you want to now you can't do anything, and then all that stuff, and to see all the losses, not just for a lot of us personally, but yeah, so much going on there. But the whole thing I was trying to say here, though, to get to this point was, there is they talk about it when the brackets come out, but it seems to me very complicated thing for how, if any of these teams, I haven't heard any yet, I've been trying to watch for it, but I haven't seen anything yet. If any of these teams, because they'll get tested every day before games and stuff, if any one of these teams have not enough players, they'll need at least 5 players to go into the games there. They have to test negative or whatever. If they have a couple positives on the team. If they don't have enough players, they get replaced by one of 4 teams, and I don't think any of them were Duke or anything, but it was like these other 4 teams. And I think St. Louis was one of them, and then there was a couple others, but still, all these, and it was like something like after a certain point, it's a forfeit and all that stuff, and it was like it's kind of confusing. But hopefully, the whole reason I think why it's kind of selective as far as what you can do if you're in Indianapolis right now and you're on one of these teams, it's just to protect you and stuff. And it's like, what, if you guys, I don't want me to say it from a higher point of view or anything, but it's like you guys wanted to play basketball. It's like you gotta give and take a little bit. You gotta take your victories where you can, and it's like part of the victory of getting to play basketball and showing your stuff and extending your potential career. If you're looking to get into NBA, you gotta make some sacrifices. And it's like if it's a couple days, and I know I'm exaggerating a little bit because it's been the whole season pretty much. A lot of these guys have just been kind of stuck away where they can't do anything for a long time, and they can't, when they're traveling and stuff, it's like there's no, going to certain restaurants after the games and stuff. It's just not been a factor this year, and much more. Obviously, I've not been there myself. I'm not on any of these teams, but it's like they've gone through a lot of sacrifices, and I know it feels like it's been a full 4 months of a season here for everybody, minus COVID breaks and stuff, obviously, but still. That's a long time. It does almost, I'm sure to some of these guys, it almost does feel like a prison sentence, to not be able to do what you want to do and all that stuff. So, I know it's like, it's one of those where I can just say, hang in there. I haven't been there myself. I can't relate to you exactly, obviously, but, you got to hang in there. And it's like, obviously, again, for the greater good for yourself, for your career, potentially for everybody, and I don't mean to be selfish about it, but everybody watching and everybody who's going to be there, and all your fans and your school and your representation and all that. It's like you got to hang in there, you got to hang tight, and it'll be a good tournament. There'll be definitely some games to watch. There'll be some tight games. There will definitely be ones that absolutely come down to the wire. Ones that go into overtime, potentially some that go into double overtime. There's going to be bad calls from the refs. There's going to be great calls from the refs. There's going to be corrections from the refs that get everybody pissed off, and there's going to be a whole bunch of shit going on. And that's March Madness. It's the madness, absolutely. All right, well, this was a super long video, guys, so thanks for sticking in there. If you're not a huge sports fan, if you stuck all the way through, God bless you. But anyways, I thought it was a good opportunity to take a break, get something different in there for once, and we'll, obviously, like I said, pretty much from this point on, I think we'll go ahead and discuss Oscars from now on when we get more into award shows again and stuff. We got a little bit of a break here in between. But still, I'll kind of throw in a word if we get some videos in between here and there where, I'll kind of talk about, ooh, wasn't that great to see so-and-so win? Or, wow, look at that, I got that completely wrong, but, all that stuff. Or, wow, I can't believe I called that. There'll be good stuff like that to discuss. So I might throw a couple couple of those in, but I don't think I'll take a long time over the next few weeks here to dedicate as much time to this. So thanks for sticking around, guys. I'm glad to get a little bit of break in there. I mean, obviously, the whole channel's devoted around Oscar talk, awards talk, all that stuff, and it's fun. It's a great thing to do, and I do appreciate everybody who watches me, all the subscribers and everything. So very glad to be here, and thank you for sticking around, guys. Hour and a half video almost, but it's gonna be a good tournament this year.